You're tuned in to The Last Radio Show.
Hello and welcome to The Last Radio Show. I'm John Lynch.
I'm Jenn Reilly.
This is a show where we talk about pop culture, we talk about movies, we talk about all kinds of stuff. We're going to talk about one of the biggest movies of all time today. Mm-hmm. And it is celebrating its 50th anniversary this summer. 50 years ago, the movie Jaws first came out.
Oh, it's older than I am.
There you go. It's unfortunately not older than I am, but still, I was very little when it came out. Well, just put it that way. And I actually got a story about that. We'll get to it in a little bit. But you've seen Jaws, right?
Truth be told, I've never been able to watch it all the way through.
It's tough to watch if you get scared.
I watch it through my fingers,
I think you and a lot of people have only seen bits and pieces of it because they close their eyes at all the tough parts.
And I'm not sure that it would hold up as far as the technology, right? Is it scary even now?
It's
the original. I mean,
it's interesting when you look at it because. The original movie, the idea was, of course, let's get some of the particulars out of the way. Of course, sure. Steven Spielberg, this was like his breakthrough movie. Mm-hmm. This was really the one that kind of put him on the map as the all-time, great director. And it's considered by most people to be the first blockbuster, the first big summer blockbuster. A couple of years after that, Star Wars came out, and then Indiana Jones and all this kind of stuff, and it was all Steven Spielberg and George Lucas all the time in the movies from the mid 70s to the early 80s. And this was really what started all that. And, of course, Jaws was kind of a risky proposition at first, because Steven Spielberg was unproven at this point. And he wanted to do this very ambitious movie where they were going to film on the water and do all these. They had this big mechanical shark they were going to use. And it was behind the scenes. It was kind of a disaster for a lot of the time. This did not go smoothly. Of course, an amazing cast. You got Robert Shaw, Roy Scheider, and Richard Dreyfuss as the main three there on the boat. And just absolutely incredible, iconic roles for all three of those actors. There's a whole thing, and we're going to get into it, behind the scenes. A lot of these actors did not like each other and did not get along. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on when they were making this movie. It's kind of amazing. To
the emotions of the whole thing. Right?
exactly. And it's, of course, the thing, whenever I hear Jaws, the first thing I think that pops into my mind and pops into a lot of people's mind is the music.
Yes.
Dun, 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 dun. John Williams, legendary Hollywood producer. Now, this is amazing. In a 6-year period, John Williams did the scores for Jaws, Close Encounters, Star Wars, Superman, The Empire Strikes Back, and Raiders of the Lost Ark. Wow. In 5 or 6 years,
right.
I mean, just so,
iconic,
and most, when you say those names, you hear his music. You hear, you hear the theme from Star Wars and Darth Vader's marching theme and the Indiana Jones theme and all, so iconic. But it started. I mean, he'd done a lot of Hollywood movies before Jaws, but this was his first partnership with Steven Spielberg. And led to him working with George Lucas, and the two of them doing a lot of iconic stuff with John Williams and just legendary stuff.
And the scariest two notes.
Two notes, Originally, supposedly, when he first bought the music to Steven Spielberg thought he was kidding.
Really?
He was like, "That's it.
This is what I'm paying all this money for?
How much are we paying you for this?" I could have done this,
right?
But it worked. It worked.
Exactly.
It worked pretty well. And as I mentioned, it was the first, considered by many to be the first major blockbuster. It made $477 million. When you adjust that for inflation, it's about a $2 billion movie now, which is pretty iconic. It was the first movie ever released on Laserdisc, which is kind of interesting. That format didn't really last very long, but it was kind of like a compact disc, but it was about the size of an album.
Yeah.
So it was this great big thing in the late 70s, which was kind of cutting edge technology. It spawned 3 sequels that were each one worse than the last one. I mean, the sequels are kind of garbage.
Yeah.
But the first movie is great. I mean, it's amazing, in the age of franchises and stuff, a lot of times back in the day, people just thought sequels were just a cash grab, trying to cash in on a popularity of a movie, and they weren't going to be that good. I think Jaws is responsible for that because really the sequels were not good at all. I mean, the second movie was okay because you still had Roy Scheider in it, but the rest of them were just silly. Jaws 3D, Jaws the Revenge, and they were just really astronomically bad. But again, the development of the first one was just such an amazing behind the scenes story. And there's documentaries out about this and stuff. I mean, there's movies about the making of this movie. Yeah. And so as I mentioned, the original idea Steven Spielberg has is they were going to film everything on the water. And they were going to have this mechanical shark that you were going to see it a lot more than you actually ended up doing in the movie.
Okay.
And they built these 3 different mechanical sharks that were going to be used throughout the movie, and none of them really worked at all. None of them did what they were supposed to do. But when they were filming on the water, of course, it became, they would have days where it was choppy and, it was, people were getting tossed around.
Oh, yeah.
People who worked in the crew were getting seasick. Richard Dreyfuss said they had to, a lot of times they were filming scenes and they had to wait for sailboats to move out of the shot because there was there were people on the ocean. Yeah, you can't close the ocean, Right. He's so they'd sit there and they'd have to wait for the sailboat to slowly drift away and, get out of the shot.
Where was it filmed again? I felt
it was filmed up in New England. Yeah, it was filmed off of I think off of New Hampshire, in that area. Martha's Vineyard, actually, I think is where it was filmed off of. And it's supposed to be Amity Island. That's the name in the movie. But and Amity means friendship. That's what the mayor always said in the thing. That was the thing, though. I think there's a lot of classic memes now of the mayor because that was the thing of his character in the movie is he was always I don't want to close the beach. We're fine. No, don't tell anybody there's sharks in the water. And he's kind of become a stand-in for every politician you can't trust.
Right.
And so when they started filming the movie, they didn't even have a script really written yet. They were kind of figuring it out as it went along. So there was a lot of stuff that was going on behind the scenes. So the movie is based on a book by Peter Benchley that came out in 1974. And even before it was published, they sold the rights to the movie. And it was, they thought the publishing people thought this was going to be a good thing, and they presented it to movie studios. And what's funny about Peter Benchley is he regrets the book because he thinks it gave sharks a bad rap. Oh. Basically, because, he was
doing it for a love story to sharks?
Yeah, I don't know what he was trying to say. I guess maybe he just didn't think it through. Maybe he was just a little bit, didn't quite think it was going to be as big a deal as it was. But he feels that sharks kind of got a bad rap out of it. Now, to be fair, if you're out swimming and you see a shark, get away from it. I mean, that's
right.
Don't assume they're going to be friendly. Right. It is their home. We are splashing around in their home. So, exactly. I guess there's a point to that. But the big thing, again, with the filming and the difficulties they had was the mechanical shark, which they called Bruce, which was Steven Spielberg's lawyer's name was Bruce. So he named the shark after his lawyer. That makes sense. Yeah. All lawyers are sharks in their own way. But they had, like I said, 3 different mechanical ones. One of them actually sank, and they had to go and get scuba divers to bring it out of the ocean because it didn't float like it was supposed to. Right. And so if you watch the movie now, you don't see the shark a lot. It's really not. Yeah.
I'm not remembering the visual of sharks.
Yeah. It was really more just the ominous thing. They'd show water. They'd play the music. And then you have somebody swimming, and all of a sudden they go underwater.
Yeah, that's all you really need.
That's all you really need. Then maybe the water turns red afterwards, and that was the whole thing. And that was everybody thought wow, that creates a lot of tension, and it's theater of the mind kind of thing. Yeah. And it's because the shark didn't work. It's they wanted it.
It probably was better that they didn't have the shark.
Steven Spielberg says that 100%. He's this was the happiest accident in the history of movie that the shark didn't work because it forced us to be much more creative than we would have been. The other thing, as I mentioned earlier too, was that the actors did not get along, and the big one was Robert Shaw, who was Quint, the gruffy fisherman, sea captain kind of guy, and Richard Dreyfuss, who was Hooper, who was the science guy, and he was the shark expert they brought in. And in the movie, they don't get along. In real life, they didn't get along. Oh, wow. And it was they said they channeled that, and years later, Richard Dreyfuss regrets the relationship that they had. and, said how he really respected Robert Shaw, but Robert Shaw kind of looked at him as like, this up and coming new guy, who's a method actor. And, he's just like, and the other thing that Robert Shaw did, like his character was supposed to be like drunk half the time. Mm-hmm. So Robert Shaw thought, well, you know what? If I'm not going to act, I'm just going to be drunk during the movie.
He was really the method.
He was really into his method. There's one of the most iconic scenes of the movie is when the three characters are on the boat and they're drinking together at night and they're telling stories and showing scars to each other. And Robert Shaw's character tells the story of the USS Indianapolis that he was on, which is a true story. It was a destroyer in World War II that was delivering the atomic bomb. Okay. Actually, so it was a top secret mission. They were delivering it to an island in Japan so they could fly it to an island off of Japan so they could, fly it to bomb Japan. And on its way home after it dropped off the bomb, it was sunk by a submarine, and all the crew were in the water for like days.
Oh, yes.
And they were attacked by a group of sharks.
Right, yes.
And so Robert Shaw tells the story that, he was part of that crew, and that's, why he hates sharks, because, he saw all his friends and very few of the men survived. And they never sent out rescue crews because the mission was top secret, so nobody knew the boat was missing.
Oh.
So there's it was never officially listed as, overdue. So that they never, it just randomly, a plane was flying by and saw some people in the water, and that's how some people got rescued.
Yeah, wasn't that the story that the sharks were just picking them off?
Yeah, they were like in big groups huddled together, and like whoever was on the outside of the group, was hors d'oeuvres basically. Mm-hmm. But in the scene, like when they first recorded it, he was completely drunk doing it. And it was pretty terrible. It didn't work. So he's like, the next day he's like, all right, I'm going to do it sober this time. And, he did and delivered an iconic scene. Right. And it was, again, one of the standout moments of the movie. I think the other line that people remember from the movie is when Officer Brody, the character that Roy Scheider plays, is throwing the chum into the water, and the shark jumps out. And that's actually the first time in the movie we actually see the shark. And he just kind of stands up and backs up and says, "You're going to need a bigger boat." Right. Yeah. That's classic. That was like an inside joke, because they basically, when they were filming, and as I mentioned, they were filming on the water, the boat they were on was very small, so everybody was like bumping into each other, and there was like no room for like the camera crews to like operate around everybody and everything. So they kept saying, "We need a bigger boat. We need a bigger boat." Improv. So they just put that in the movie. They're like, "Yeah, you know what? that's pretty good. We're going to go with that." And Steven Spielberg basically had a mental breakdown while he was doing this movie, because it was going over budget. I think it was tripled the budget of what they originally planned for, and like I said, nothing was working. Right. And so they were spending all this money, and it was a disaster. He thought it was going to finish his career.
I was going to say that's at that point you're like, oh my god, what did I do?
Yeah, exactly. He thought this was like the biggest disaster ever, and it was a disaster movie, but he didn't mean it in that way. And there actually was an iconic moment where he was hanging out with his friends, George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, who were his buddies, and they were all like, the big hotshot directors, kind of up and coming, kind of thing. And, they did every movie in the 70s that meant anything, basically. But they were hanging out, and so so Spielberg brought them to this warehouse where they were keeping the mechanical shark, and he was showing them. He's like, "Oh, check out, the shark we're using," kind of thing. And George Lucas, joking around, put his head in the shark and got caught. Oh. And like almost like they had to like whack the thing to get it to stop like from biting George Lucas's head off, literally. Which would have been no Star Wars, nothing, would have changed movie history insanely. I mean, would have
probably would have not released Jaws. Also.
Probably not. No, that would not be a good thing. So that was an iconic moment in movie history that almost destroyed everything, basically. But as I mentioned, they finally finished the movie, and it became this blockbuster of epic proportions. And there was like a mania, like they sold T-shirts with Jaws on and stuff. This was the first big movie. Now, I mentioned you mentioned how whenever you watch it basically through your hands covered over your eyes, basically, right?
When I was a kid, and I feel like I never revisited it. I was like, I like to go to the beach. I just need that image away from my brain.
That was a serious thing. People didn't go to the beach after this for years.
I lived on the water when I saw it, and I remember like having dreams about sharks coming into my house, like on land. You know?
It definitely did that. And when the second movie came out, the tagline was just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water. Mm-hmm. That was, which was better than the movie. Actually, the tagline was actually pretty good. Now, I mentioned how I was very little when this movie came out. When I was, I believe, 5 years old, my parents took me to see Jaws in the movie theaters. Yes.
That's interesting.
My horrible, horrible parents took me to see Jaws as a 5-year-old. And I can vaguely remember watching it, and I actually had my father's jacket over my head. And I was watching through the sleeve. Like, I'd hold up the sleeve kind of like a periscope so I could see, like, the movie.
Right.
And whenever
that's how you watch it, yeah.
That's how I watch it. And whenever, like, the shark came, I'd close it up and fold it down. And my mother said, oh, you had nightmares for, like, a week afterwards. I'm like, of course I did. You took me to see Jaws, and I was 5. I mean,
did you actually go in the water after that for like a year or so?
I think I was a little cautious. I mean, I think I was definitely worried. I always had nightmares. There was the iconic scene in the movie where Richard Dreyfuss goes down in the water in the cage and the shark attacks him. He's trying to like get him with the spear with like knockout gas or whatever it was. And I had a dream that I was in that cage. Oh, and I can still remember this dream vividly from when I was a little kid.
Isn't that crazy? I have a Jaws dream too. I'm telling you that like the shark came into my house on land because it filled up with water and somehow and I still remember it. How many dreams do you remember? Not that many from a childhood.
Right? Exactly. Well, there was the iconic sketch on Saturday Night Live that Chevy Chase did like at the height of Jaws mania, which was Land Shark. And it was basically he was like knocking on the door and he said telegram and he opened up and it's like just him in like a Jaws suit, and they did that for years on Saturday Night Live. It was like one of their running bits. But yeah, it caused a mania. There was like board games, and as I mentioned, it was the first Laserdisc release.
Yeah.
And now what's interesting is every summer that you see, especially like in beach areas, they'll have showings where you can watch it in the water. Like you go to like a beach.
The water?
Yeah, and you're like floating in like tubes and stuff like that. Oh. And they show it on a big screen on the beach.
People love to be scared.
People love to be scared.
They really do. I mean, they do show it on our beach nearby, and I'm always like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
But in the water, I don't really think I can do it.
That might be pushing your luck. That might be pushing your luck. And, there is some history. Of course, the story is fictional.
Right.
But there was apparently some real life stories that inspired it. In New Jersey in like the 19-teens or 1920s, there was these shark attacks like that went on like near a Jersey Shore town where they think it was really like inland. It was actually like up a stream, like not even like in the ocean. Oh, wow. And they think like this shark got disoriented and ended up in these waters and became very vicious because it was kind of trapped and attacked a bunch and killed a bunch of people. Oh. And that was like kind of like the worst shark attack in the U.S. And again, this was kind of like one of the stories that inspired the movie.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and of course, as I mentioned, the story with the Indianapolis sinking too. Of course, those are like the two big shark stories. In other countries, it's more common. Like in Australia, that's like, getting a bee sting is getting eaten by a shark.
Well, I have to say, we've lately, in the last few years, there's been quite a few shark bites. But like bites. And I'm like, I didn't know a shark could just bite you.
Yeah, you think it's, I mean, obviously, there are a bunch of different sharks, too.
Yes,
I mean, the shark in Jaws is supposed to be a great white, which is one of the big ones and one of the nastier ones. Yeah. There's sand sharks, which only get a couple of feet, and they're not going to eat you up, know, but if they bite you, you could, potentially lose a limb or something like that if they, depending on where they get you,
Oh, have you ever went online and looked at the shark tracker and actually see how many sharks are very close to the shore?
Oh, yeah.
Where we go to the beach.
Yeah, absolutely.
So apparently they're not that like human hungry because they could just feast
if they wanted to snack on us, they could go to town. They could have a lot of hors d'oeuvres. Yeah, but again, if you're interested, like if you haven't seen the movie Jaws, stop at 1. Do not go Jaws 2. Do not go Jaws 3. Do not go Jaws 4.
That's right.
Because probably the most shocking amount of decline in a movie series in the history of movies, I think, because the others are just so bad and so comically bad. But
well, that's a one-story thing. I mean,
that's true.
There's not much else there.
That is true. That is true. And, I do remember that Jaws is one of the first movies I remember anybody saying, well, I read the book and it was so different, because there's apparently a lot more in the book. Oh, okay. There's a whole mafia subplot apparently in the book, which I don't know how you work that into a shark movie. But yeah, I mean, this was not too long after The Godfather, so maybe everything had to have a mafia thing going into it. But yeah, apparently there was a whole other thing like with that. And I do remember, I think my mother had read the book, or my mother or father read it and said like, oh yeah, they changed a lot of that.
But did they like the book better than the movie?
I don't remember. To be honest with you. I mean, most people say books are better than movies if they read the book and the movie. But yeah, I mean, usually you can get into more detail, obviously, in a book. Right. Because, you're not, in that 2-hour window.
Maybe I'll read the book on the beach this summer.
Maybe you should read the book maybe you should read it in the winter. When, that might be
revisit that.
Yeah,
don't childhood.
Yeah, don't take it to the beach with you. Stay out of the water. Thank you for listening to The Last Radio Show. If you like the show, please subscribe to the podcast and leave us a review on your favorite platform. You can check us out on Facebook and Instagram at The Last Radio Show. We will talk to you soon.
The Last Radio Show. The Last Radio Show.